I watched my wife's reflection in our bedroom mirror as she slipped into her new red dress. The fabric hugged her curves in a way that made my throat go dry, but it was the gleam in her eyes that truly caught my attention. I hadn't seen Jessica this excited about anything in months. "What do you think?" She twirled around, the hem of her dress flaring slightly. "Too much for a company Christmas party?" "You look stunning," I said, adjusting my tie. "You've been preparing for this party for weeks. I don't think I've ever seen you this excited about a work event before." Jessica avoided my gaze, busying herself with her earrings. "It's been a tough year, Eric. The whole team deserves to let loose a little." The grand ballroom of the Westfield Hotel buzzed with conversation and laughter when we arrived. Christmas decorations hung from every possible surface, and a massive tree dominated one corner. Jessica immediately tensed with excitement, scanning the crowd like she was looking for someone specific. "There's my team," she said quickly, grabbing my hand and pulling me toward a group gathered near the bar. "Come meet everyone." I recognized a few faces from previous company events, but one man stood out, tall, with perfect teeth and a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. The way his eyes lit up when he saw Jessica made something twist in my stomach. "Jessica." He embraced her with the familiarity of an old friend, holding on just a moment too long. "And this must be the famous Eric." "Chad, this is my husband," Jessica said, her voice pitched slightly higher than normal. "Eric, this is Chad from Marketing Analytics." Chad's handshake was firm, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Jessica's told me so much about you. She's the soul of our office, you know. Keeps us all entertained." "Does she?" I smiled tightly, noticing how Jessica shifted her weight, moving imperceptibly closer to Chad. "Oh, the stories I could tell," Chad said with a laugh that seemed to contain a private joke. Jessica giggled, and playfully swatted his arm. "Chad, behave yourself." Throughout the evening, I found myself watching them. The way Jessica leaned in when Chad spoke, laughing too enthusiastically at his jokes. The subtle touches that could be innocent but felt deliberate. Her phone kept vibrating in her clutch, and each time she checked it, she angled the screen away from me. After an hour, I was at the bar getting another drink when I overheard two women nearby. "They think nobody notices," one woman murmured. "Jessica's playing with fire," the other replied. "Her husband seems nice. I almost feel bad for him. Their little secret isn't as secret as they think." My hand tightened around my glass. I searched the room for Jessica but couldn't find her. Chad was also missing. I moved through the crowd, looking in every corner of the ballroom. Nothing. I checked my watch, she'd been gone for at least 15 minutes. Stepping into the hallway, I looked left toward the restrooms, then right toward a service exit. That's when I heard her laugh, soft and intimate, from around the corner. I moved quietly, careful not to make a sound. In a narrow corridor near a side exit, Jessica stood with Chad, their bodies close enough that I could see no space between them. Her hand rested on his chest, her head tilted up toward him. "We have to be careful," I heard her whisper. "Eric's already asking questions." "Let him ask," Chad replied, his hand sliding to the small of her back. "We'll be more discreet. Mexico is still happening, right?" "Of course it is. I've got it all planned out." I stepped back, my heart hammering against my ribs. A waiter passing with a tray of glasses nearly crashed into me, the noise making Jessica and Chad spring apart. "Eric?" Jessica's face flushed as she rounded the corner. "There you are. I was just getting some water, it's so hot in there." I looked at her flushed cheeks, her slightly smudged lipstick and the guilty dart of her eyes. "I've been looking for you," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor I felt inside. "Ready to go home? Already?" She glanced back toward the corridor where Chad still lurked. "It's still early. I've seen enough for one night," I said, offering my arm with a smile that felt like broken glass. "Haven't you?" The color drained from her face as she took my arm, and we walked back into the party in silence, the weight of unspoken accusations hanging between us like a storm about to break. The ride home felt like an eternity. Jessica stared out the passenger window, her reflection fractured by passing streetlights. Neither of us spoke. The silence in our car was so thick I could barely breathe through it. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, replaying everything I'd seen. Jessica's lingering touches. Chad's possessive gaze. Their whispered conversation in that dimly lit corridor. The words, "Mexico is still happening," echoed in my mind like a taunt. When we finally reached our driveway, Jessica was out of the car before I'd fully stopped, her red dress a blur as she hurried to the front door. I followed slowly, each step heavier than the last, dreading the conversation to come. Inside, Jessica kicked off her heels and headed straight for the kitchen. I found her pouring a generous glass of wine, her back to me. "Are you going to tell me what's going on between you and Chad?" I asked, my voice sounding calmer than I felt. The wine bottle clinked against the counter as she set it down too hard. "Nothing is going on. He's a colleague. Colleagues don't usually disappear into secluded hallways together at parties." Jessica turned to face me, her expression hardening. "Were you spying on me?" "I was looking for my wife, who vanished for 15 minutes. "Is that spying?" "You're being paranoid." She took a long sip of wine. "Chad and I were discussing a confidential project. We needed privacy." "What kind of project requires your hand on his chest?" I stepped closer. "Or him touching the small of your back? Or discussing a trip to Mexico that you've never mentioned to me?" Her eyes widened briefly before narrowing. "You were eavesdropping on us? In the corridor?" "God, Eric, I can't believe you don't trust me." "I noticed you mentioned the corridor incident just now," I said quietly. "Interesting, since I never specified which corridor I found you in." The color drained from her face before anger rushed in to replace it. "This is ridiculous. You're twisting everything because you're insecure." "Am I?" "Let's talk about all those late-night client meetings then. The ones that somehow never have email follow-ups. Or how about last month, when Tom from accounting told me he saw you and Chad having dinner at Bellini's? Funny, you told me you were meeting with vendors that night." Jessica's laugh was brittle. "Tom saw me and Chad at a business dinner. With clients. It was completely professional." I pulled out my phone and showed her the message from Tom. "Saw Jessica with Chad at Bellini's last night. Just the two of them in that private booth in the back. Seemed pretty cozy for a work dinner." "Tom's exaggerating," she stammered. "It's not what it looked like. We had a confidential project that required." "Another confidential project? You seem to have a lot of those lately. All with Chad. You don't understand the nature of our work." Her voice rose, edging toward hysteria. "Some projects require discretion. The company is planning a major acquisition. We couldn't risk being overheard." "Stop lying to me." My voice dropped to nearly a whisper. "I'm giving you one chance, to come clean right now. Otherwise we're done." "There's nothing to come clean about." She hurled her wine glass into the sink where it shattered, red liquid splashing against white porcelain like blood. "You've constructed this entire fantasy because you can't handle that I'm successful and have male colleagues. I'm not having an affair with Chad or anyone else." I stared at her, searching for any sign of the woman I'd married. All I saw was a stranger, her features contorted with defensive rage. "I'm going to bed," I said finally. "When you're ready to tell the truth, let me know." "There is no truth to tell," she shouted at my back. "You're ruining everything with your paranoia. Is that what you want? To destroy our marriage over nothing?" I turned at the doorway. "No, Jessica. I think you've already done that yourself." The guest bedroom door slammed behind her minutes later, hard enough to rattle the picture frames in the hallway. I stood alone in our bedroom, surrounded by photos of happier times. Had they all been a lie too? How long had she been living this double life? I sank onto the edge of our bed, pulling out my phone to reread Tom's message. There were other signs I'd ignored for months. The sudden business trips. The unexplained expenses. The way she guarded her phone. The mysterious text notifications she'd quickly dismiss when I entered the room. Tomorrow I decided I would find proof, one way or the other. No more accusations without evidence. No more denials without verification. If Jessica wouldn't give me the truth, I'd uncover it myself. I laid awake for hours, listening to the occasional muffled sound from the guest room. Once I thought I heard her crying. But then I heard the distinctive ping of her text notification, followed by the soft tap of her typing a response. Even now, in the middle of the night, she was connected to someone else. I rolled over, facing the empty side of our bed, and wondered how long it had been since Jessica had truly been mine. Morning arrived with the dull ache of too little sleep. I shuffled into the kitchen to find Jessica already dressed in workout clothes, sunglasses perched on her head despite the overcast day. "I'm not feeling well," she mumbled, massaging her temples. "Too much wine last night." Our eyes met briefly before she looked away. The tightness around her mouth told me her hangover was more convenient excuse than reality. "I need to grab some groceries," she continued, gathering her purse. "We have nothing for dinner." "I could go," I offered, watching her reaction carefully. "No, I need the fresh air." Jessica headed for the door, then paused. "Eric, about last night, can we just forget it? I hate fighting with you." Before I could answer, she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her. Her laptop sat on the kitchen counter, partially open. The opportunity was too perfect to be coincidence. Was she testing me? I hesitated only a moment before sitting down. The screen lit up, asking for a password. I tried our anniversary, then her birthday, both failures. On a hunch, I typed Chadwick, Chad's full name, and the screen unlocked. My stomach twisted. How long had she been using his name as her password? I found nothing suspicious in her emails or browser history, which seemed too clean, as if deliberately scrubbed. I almost gave up until I noticed an unfamiliar icon in her applications folder, a messaging app I'd never seen before. The app opened to an archived conversation thread labeled simply Work Project. I clicked it, and Chad's name appeared at the top. The earliest messages were innocent enough, discussing deadlines, sharing document links. But as I scrolled, the tone shifted. Flirtatious comments. Inside jokes. Heart emojis. Then finally, about 6 months ago, the first explicit message from Chad. I can't stop thinking about you. Yesterday in the conference room was torture, being so close but unable to touch you. Jessica's response made me physically recoil. Tonight. My place. Eric has that dinner with his brother. I remembered that night. I'd come home early with food poisoning to find Jessica working late. She'd never mentioned being home at all. I kept scrolling, each message driving the knife deeper. Detailed accounts of their encounters. Plans for future meetups. Photos I couldn't bring myself to open fully. My hands shaking, I opened her calendar app. Dozens of entries marked client meeting or marketing strategy session, had private notes attached. Opening one revealed the truth. Chad's place, bring the red lingerie. In her documents folder, I found a spreadsheet labeled Q4 projections. Inside was a list of dates, locations and amounts, records of gifts she'd bought for Chad using our joint account. Watches. Designer clothes. Weekend getaways disguised as business trips. The photos folder contained hundreds of images in a password-protected archive. Using Chad's name again, I gained access and immediately wished I hadn't. There they were together, in hotel rooms, at restaurants, and most devastating of all, in our house. Our bedroom. Our couch. Even posed in front of our wedding photo. In a subfolder labeled Insurance, I found explicit photos of Chad that Jessica had apparently kept as leverage. Another folder contained confirmation emails for flights and a resort booking in Cancun, Mexico, a New Year's getaway she'd never mentioned. I sat back, numb with shock. This wasn't just an affair, it was a double life, meticulously documented and maintained for months. Years possibly. While copying essential files to my personal drive, I discovered something else. Conversations with other men from her office. Chad wasn't the only one. There were at least 2 others, though their conversations weren't as extensive. The sound of a car door slamming jerked me back to reality. Jessica was home. I quickly closed everything, returning the laptop exactly as I'd found it, and moved to the living room just as she entered with grocery bags. "Hey," she said, seeming surprised to see me. "Feeling better?" "Much," I replied, studying her face, this stranger I'd shared a bed with for years. Did she feel any guilt at all? Any conflict? Or was I simply an inconvenience to be managed while she built her real life elsewhere? "I got ingredients for pasta," she said, unpacking groceries with domestic normality, as if we were still the couple we pretended to be. "I thought comfort food might help us reset after last night." I nodded, watching her move around our kitchen, wondering how many times she'd cooked dinner for me after being with him. How many lies she'd told while passing me the salt. How many nights I'd held her while she dreamed of someone else. "Sounds nice," I said, the words hollow in my throat. "Need any help?" Jessica smiled, relief evident in her expression. She thought she'd weathered the storm. That I'd chosen comfortable denial over painful truth. "No thanks, I've got it under control." "No," I thought, watching her chop vegetables with practiced ease. "But I finally do." The pasta dinner was a masterclass in restraint. Every bite tasted like ash as I watched Jessica chat about mundane things. Office politics, a new restaurant downtown, plans to visit her parents next month. All while the evidence of her double life burned in my mind. She touched my hand across the table. "See? Isn't this better than fighting?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The tenderness in her eyes seemed so genuine that for a fleeting moment, I questioned what I'd discovered. How could someone fake emotions so convincingly? After dinner, Jessica suggested a movie. Something normal. Something couples do. I agreed and excused myself to grab my laptop from upstairs, claiming I needed to check a work email first. When I returned to the living room, I didn't sit beside her on the couch. Instead, I placed my laptop on the coffee table between us and opened it. "What's wrong?" she asked, her smile faltering. "I think we should talk about your trip to Mexico," I said quietly. Her face remained carefully neutral. "What trip to Mexico?" I turned the screen toward her, displaying the resort confirmation emails I'd copied from her computer. "Your New Year's getaway with Chad. 5 nights at the Ocean Paradise Resort in Cancun. Ocean View Suite. All expenses paid from our joint savings account." The color drained from her face. Her mouth opened but no words came out. "I found everything, Jessica." My voice remained eerily calm. "The messages, the photos, the calendar. Your creative accounting of our finances. You went through my computer?" Her voice trembled with outrage, not shame. "Yes. That's invasion of privacy. You had no right. And you had no right to sleep with Chad in our bed," I cut her off. "Or Jason from accounting. Or Michael from legal. Did I miss anyone?" Her eyes widened in horror as she realized the full extent of what I'd discovered. "How could you, Jessica? 6 months of lying to my face. Taking money from our account to buy him gifts. Planning vacations together. Using our home, our bed, when I was away. You don't understand," she whispered. "Then explain it to me," I said, leaning forward. "Help me understand how the woman I married could live a complete double life without a single moment of remorse." Jessica stood abruptly, pacing the room. "This isn't fair. You weren't supposed to find out like this." "When was I supposed to find out? After you drained our accounts? After you'd left for Mexico and never came back?" She whirled on me, eyes flashing. "Yes. Okay. Yes. That was the plan. I was going to leave after Christmas. Start fresh. You've ruined everything." The venom in her voice staggered me. There was no guilt there, only fury at being caught. "Is Chad leaving his wife too?" I asked. Her bitter laugh chilled me. "Chad's not leaving anyone. He's just having fun." "And the others? Jason, Michael. How many more, Jessica?" She stopped pacing, her shoulders slumping slightly. "Does it matter?" "It does to me." "Fine," she spat. "You want the truth? Chad wasn't the first. Not even close." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. "What do you mean?" 2 years ago. Corporate retreat in Denver. My department head, Robert, hit on me at the hotel bar. Her voice took on a detached quality. It was exciting. Forbidden. "He made me feel alive in a way you hadn't in years." Each word was a physical blow. 2 years? You've been cheating for 2 years? On and off. Different men. It wasn't personal, Eric. She had the audacity to look annoyed, as if I was overreacting. Our marriage was suffocating me. I felt trapped. So trapped that you couldn't talk to me? Couldn't suggest counseling? Couldn't ask for a divorce before sleeping with half your office? "I wanted freedom without hurting you," she said, her tone suggesting this was somehow considerate. "If you never knew. If I never knew, you could have everything. The stable husband at home, the excitement of affairs, and our money funding your fun," I finished for her. "How generous of you to spare my feelings while betraying me in every possible way." Jessica's face hardened. "You were always so content with our boring life. So complacent. I needed more." 2 years. I thought back to that time. How she'd returned from that Denver trip different. More distant. How she'd started working later. How the warmth between us had gradually cooled until we were going through the motions of marriage without the substance. I stood up, unable to bear looking at her anymore. "I want you out of this house tomorrow. You can't just throw me out. Half of everything is mine." "Actually, the house is in my name," I reminded her. "And I have evidence of your financial fraud. You've been transferring our joint funds into private accounts and forging my signature. That's criminal, Jessica." Her face paled again. "You wouldn't. I wouldn't have thought you capable of any of this, yet here we are." I walked toward the door, needing air, needing distance. "Pack your things. I'll be at Dan's tonight." "Eric, wait." I closed the door on her voice, on the ruins of what I'd thought was my life, and walked into the cold night air alone. I drove aimlessly through the night, the city lights blurring through tears I refused to acknowledge. My world had collapsed in the span of 48 hours, from blissful ignorance at a Christmas party to the crushing reality that my marriage had been a facade for years. Eventually, I found myself at Riverside Park. Deserted this late, it offered solitude as I parked and stared at the dark water reflecting distant streetlights. I couldn't face Dan yet, couldn't bear to speak the words that would make Jessica's betrayal real. My phone rang, startling me. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Mr. Mitchell? This is Andrew Kellerman from First National Bank. The formal tone immediately set off alarms. I apologize for calling outside business hours, but our fraud detection system flagged some unusual activity on your joint account. I've been trying to reach you all day. My grip tightened on the phone. What kind of unusual activity? Several large transfers were initiated this afternoon to an offshore account. Given the amount and destination, our system flagged it for manual review. How much? I asked, already knowing Jessica must be behind this. 3 separate transfers totaling $97,000. I closed my eyes, fighting a wave of nausea. Nearly $100,000? Most of our savings? Those transfers weren't authorized by me. I suspected as much, Andrew said. The timing and pattern seemed questionable. We've temporarily frozen the account. You'll need to come in tomorrow to file a formal dispute. What about previous transfers? Have there been others? Let me check. I heard typing in the background. Yes, multiple smaller transfers over the past year to a separate account. They didn't trigger our system because they were under our threshold, but in total, approximately $63,000 has been moved. I thanked him and promised to be at the bank first thing tomorrow. Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Jessica hadn't just been emotionally unfaithful, she'd been systematically draining our finances. My phone buzzed with a text from Dan. You okay? Jessica called looking for you. Sounded weird. I replied that I was fine and would be there soon, then called a number I'd never expected to use. Martin Schwartz, my company's financial advisor. Eric? Everything all right? Martin sounded surprised to hear from me so late. I need to ask about something sensitive. If someone took out a loan using my name and information, how would I find out? Jesus, Eric. Has someone stolen your identity? Something like that. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. Martin walked me through checking my credit report immediately through an online service. Within minutes, I was staring at the screen in disbelief. A home equity loan for $75,000 had been taken out 3 months ago, against our house in my name. The signature on the digital application was clearly forged. I didn't authorize this, I told Martin. The signature isn't mine. File a police report immediately, he advised. This is serious fraud. Do you have any idea who could have done this? Yes, I said, my voice hardening. My wife. After hanging up, I drove to Dan's place, the weight of Jessica's betrayal growing heavier with each revelation. Not only had she betrayed our marriage with multiple affairs, but she'd also systematically stolen our financial future. Dan opened his door before I could knock, his face etched with concern. You look like hell. I brushed past him, collapsing onto his couch. Jessica's been cheating. Multiple men. For years. Dan sat beside me, his shock evident. Christ, Eric. I'm so sorry. That's not all. My laugh sounded brittle. She's been stealing from us. Transferring money to private accounts. She even took out a loan in my name. That's criminal, Dan said, his expression darkening. Have you called the police? Not yet. Just found out about the loan tonight. I pressed the heels of my hands against my eyes. The bank caught her trying to transfer more money today, almost $100,000. She must have panicked after you confronted her, Dan reasoned, trying to grab what she could before running. When my phone rang again, I wasn't surprised to see Jessica's name. I let it go to voicemail. Moments later, a text appeared. We need to talk. Don't do anything rash. She knows she's caught, Dan said, reading the message over my shoulder. What are you going to do? File a police report. Contact a divorce attorney. Try not to completely fall apart. I attempted a smile that felt more like a grimace. Dan squeezed my shoulder. The guest room's yours for as long as you need. But first you should check if there's anything else. He was right. I needed to know the full extent of Jessica's deception before facing her again. I called our investment advisor, who confirmed my suspicions. Jessica had liquidated most of our mutual funds 2 weeks ago, another $30,000 gone. By the time I'd made all the calls, the financial picture was horrifying. Between transfers, the fraudulent loan, and liquidated investments, Jessica had diverted or stolen over $200,000. Our life savings, our future. I returned to Dan's living room, where he waited with 2 glasses of whiskey. How bad? He asked. Everything, I said, taking the offered drink. She's taken almost everything. My phone chimed with another text from Jessica. Coming home now. Found note. We can work this out. Please don't do anything stupid. What note? I asked aloud. You better go back, Dan said grimly. See what she's up to. I'm calling my buddy at the police department. This has gone beyond divorce territory. I nodded, gathering my coat, mentally preparing to face the woman who had not only broken my heart but had also methodically broken our lives apart, piece by precious piece. When I pulled into our driveway, Jessica's car was already there. I sat for a moment, gathering strength for whatever manipulation awaited me inside. The house lights blazed as if nothing was wrong, as if this was just another normal evening. I found her in the kitchen, makeup streaked from crying, hair disheveled. She'd changed into my favorite sweater of hers, a calculated choice, no doubt. Eric, she breathed, rushing toward me. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. Thank God you're home. I was so worried. What note were you talking about? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Her eyes darted away. I started writing you something. To explain. I didn't finish it. Another lie. Where is it? I threw it away. It wasn't good enough. Jessica's expression shifted to remorse so perfect it would win awards. Eric, I know I've made terrible mistakes. But what happened with the others? It didn't mean anything. It was just physical. I almost laughed. And the $200,000 you stole? Was that just physical too? She flinched. It's not what you think. Really? Because the bank, the credit bureau, and our investment advisor all seem to think it's fraud. I was investing for our future, she insisted, her eyes wide with manufactured sincerity. I know it looks bad, but I can explain everything. Go ahead, I said, crossing my arms. I've been taking financial courses online, learning about offshore investments. The returns are amazing. I was going to surprise you with how much I'd grown our savings. Each word dripped with desperate conviction. It's all still our money, Eric. I would never steal from you. And the loan in my name? With my forged signature? Her story faltered. I needed seed capital. The opportunities were time-sensitive. I was going to pay it back before you ever knew. And the Mexico trip with Chad? That was an investment too. A business opportunity, she said quickly. Chad has connections. Stop. I held up my hand, physically unable to hear more lies. Just stop. Jessica's facade cracked. Fine. What do you want from me? A full confession? Yes, I took the money. Yes, I was leaving. What else is there to say? Nothing. I filed a police report tonight. They'll be contacting you. Her face paled. You didn't. I did. Identity theft. Fraud. Forgery. They're all crimes, Jessica. You can't be serious. Panic edged into her voice. I'm your wife. You're a criminal who happens to be married to me. For now. Her demeanor changed instantly, panic replaced by calculation. If you do this, your credit will be ruined for years. The legal fees alone will destroy what's left of our savings. Is that what you want? To destroy both our lives? Better than letting you steal everything and disappear. Jessica's shoulders slumped. I'll put it back. All of it. Just call off the police. Please, Eric. I made a terrible mistake. Was she actually remorseful or just afraid of consequences? It didn't matter anymore. I'll consider dropping charges if you return everything. And sign divorce papers without contesting. She nodded too quickly. Of course. Whatever you need. I'll fix this. I knew better than to believe her, but I needed time to document everything before she could hide more evidence. I'll be staying at Dan's. You have until tomorrow to start the transfers back. I will. I promise. Her voice quavered. Eric, I really am sorry. I turned to leave, too exhausted for more lies, when the doorbell rang. We both froze. Are you expecting someone? I asked. Jessica shook her head, looking genuinely confused. I opened the door to find a woman with short dark hair and determined eyes. She looked vaguely familiar. Eric Mitchell? She asked. Yes. My name is Laura Sinclair. I used to work with Jessica until 3 months ago. Her gaze shifted past me to where Jessica stood, suddenly rigid. I need to talk to you about your wife. Jessica rushed forward. Laura, this isn't a good time. It's exactly the right time, Laura interrupted. Before she ruins anyone else's life. I stepped aside. Come in. Laura entered, pointedly avoiding Jessica's attempt to touch her arm. I was fired from Meridian Marketing 3 months ago. For financial irregularities I didn't commit. Jessica's laugh sounded strangled. Laura, you can't still be bitter about that misunderstanding? It wasn't a misunderstanding, Laura said coldly. It was a frame job. Your wife was embezzling from company accounts and set me up to take the fall. I stared at Jessica, whose face had gone ghostly white. Is this true? Of course not, Jessica protested. Laura was caught misappropriating client funds. It had nothing to do with me. Laura pulled a USB drive from her pocket. I have proof. After I was fired, I kept digging. Jessica altered financial records and forged my signature on fund transfers. The money went to personal expenses, mostly gifts for the men she was sleeping with at the office. She's delusional, Jessica hissed. Don't listen to her. The documents show she was planning to frame Chad next, Laura continued. She's been systematically stealing for over a year, then creating evidence against others as insurance. You backstabbing bitch, Jessica lunged toward Laura, but I stepped between them. Was firing Laura part of your exit strategy? I asked Jessica. Setting up scapegoats while you planned your escape? Jessica's silence was answer enough. Laura turned to me. I came because I heard rumors she was planning to leave after Christmas. I thought her husband should know what kind of person he's married to. I already found out, I said grimly. I have all the evidence here, Laura held up the drive. I'll testify if needed. She's done this before at her previous company. It's a pattern. Jessica backed away, her mask completely fallen now. You'll regret this, both of you. I met Laura's determined gaze. We should talk. She nodded. I think we have a lot to discuss. As Jessica stormed upstairs, I felt something shift inside me, the first stirring of control returning. With Laura's evidence and my own, the full picture of Jessica's deception was finally coming into focus. And with it, a plan for justice began to form. The week leading up to Christmas unfolded in a bizarre charade. I returned to our house but slept in the guest room, documenting every piece of evidence while Jessica performed the role of repentant wife. She made elaborate breakfasts I couldn't stomach. She left apologetic notes on my pillow. She even transferred back some of the money, a pitiful fraction of what she'd taken, as a show of good faith. To her credit, she was a masterful actress. If I hadn't seen the evidence myself, her tearful confessions and promises of change might have swayed me. But behind her performance, I caught calculating glances when she thought I wasn't looking. Whispered phone conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. Late-night computer sessions she quickly closed. She didn't know that Laura and I were in daily communication, building an airtight case against her. Laura had provided company documents showing how Jessica had diverted client funds, forged signatures, and systematically framed colleagues who got too close to discovering her schemes. Laura herself had nearly faced criminal charges before proving her innocence. Your wife has done this before, Laura told me over coffee at a cafe far from our neighborhood. She creates a mess, blames someone else, then moves on with a clean reputation and a fat bank account. My phone buzzed with a message from Dan. Christmas dinner still on for tomorrow? Mom and Dad arriving at 3. The annual Christmas Eve dinner at Dan's house, a family tradition I'd completely forgotten. I texted back a confirmation, then paused, an idea forming. Laura, I said slowly, what are you doing for Christmas Eve? She looked surprised. Nothing special. Why? How would you feel about attending a family dinner? Laura's smile was slow but determined. I think that could be arranged. That evening, Jessica cornered me in the kitchen. I've been thinking about Dan's dinner tomorrow. What should I bring? Just yourself, I said, keeping my voice neutral. And wear that red dress from the company party. My mom always comments on how nice you look in it. Her eyes lit up at this apparent olive branch. Really? You want me to wear that? It's a special occasion, I said, managing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. The next day, I helped Jessica zip up the red dress, her visible relief at this gesture of normalcy almost making me pity her. Almost. You look beautiful, I said, and it wasn't a lie. Jessica had always been stunning. It was everything beneath the surface that had rotted away. Thank you, she whispered, reaching for my hand. Eric, I know we have a long road ahead, but I'm so grateful you're giving us a chance. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without revealing the truth. There was no us anymore. There was only the final act of a marriage built on lies. Dan's house glowed with Christmas lights as we arrived. Jessica clutched a bottle of wine in my arm, playing the devoted wife as we greeted my parents. Mom hugged Jessica tightly, unaware of the serpent in her embrace. Dad clapped my shoulder, his eyes questioning when he saw my strained smile. Everything okay, son? He murmured. It will be, I promised. The gathering grew as Dan's friends arrived. Then, as planned, several of Jessica's colleagues appeared, People Dan had coincidentally met at his gym and invited. Jessica's smile faltered when she saw them, but she recovered quickly, laughing too loudly and gripping my arm tighter. "What are they doing here?" she hissed between gritted teeth. "Dan's been making new friends," I said innocently. Her tension escalated when Chad walked in with a mutual friend. I felt her fingers dig into my arm as her lover glanced at her, then quickly away, equally surprised by the unexpected encounter. "You planned this," she accused under her breath. Before I could answer, Laura arrived and Jessica went absolutely rigid. "You invited her?" The fury in Jessica's whisper could have melted steel. "Actually, I did," Dan said, appearing beside us. "Laura's been consulting for my company. Brilliant financial mind." Jessica's eyes darted between Laura and Chad, suddenly realizing she was surrounded by people who knew different pieces of her deception. I watched panic flicker across her face as Laura discreetly passed me a folder while greeting my parents. As dinner was served, the tension at the table was palpable. Jessica barely touched her food, jumping at every clinking glass, every burst of laughter. Chad kept his distance, but their eyes met repeatedly in silent, panicked communication. When Dan rose for the traditional family toast, Jessica visibly relaxed, thinking the worst was over. She didn't notice me standing until I was already on my feet. "I'd like to say something," I announced, my heart hammering despite weeks of preparation for this moment. All eyes turned to me. Jessica's face was a frozen mask of dread. I lifted my glass, looking around the table at the faces of those I loved, those who had been deceived and those who already knew the truth. "To honesty," I said, my voice steady. "Because without it, we have nothing." And then I began to tell them everything. The aftermath of the Christmas dinner exposure was both immediate and chaotic. Jessica had fled Dan's house in tears, her perfect image shattered as I methodically laid out her betrayals. The affairs, the financial fraud, the deliberate framing of colleagues. Chad had disappeared minutes later, unable to meet anyone's eyes. My parents sat in stunned silence while Jessica's co-workers confirmed details of her workplace manipulations. That night marked the true end of my marriage, not with a whisper but with a thunderous crash of truth. The weeks that followed blurred into a parade of legal meetings and paperwork. I filed for divorce on grounds of adultery and financial misconduct. I submitted fraud claims to credit bureaus and banks. I met with detectives investigating the identity theft and forgery charges. Jessica, for her part, vanished for 3 days after the dinner before resurfacing with a vengeance, and a lawyer known for aggressive divorce tactics. "Mr. Mitchell, your wife contends that you drove her to seek comfort elsewhere through emotional neglect," her attorney informed me during our first meeting. His Italian suit and shark-like smile spoke of expensive hourly rates. "She's prepared to testify about your controlling behavior and invasion of her privacy." My own attorney Valerie, a steely-eyed woman who specialized in high-conflict divorce, simply smiled. "And we're prepared to present evidence of Mrs. Mitchell's multiple affairs, systematic financial fraud, and criminal behavior that extends beyond their marriage. Would your client prefer those details to become public record?" The opening salvos of our legal battle established the pattern. Jessica's attempts to rewrite history met with documented evidence of her deception. I was leaving a particularly draining meeting with Valerie when my phone rang with an unknown number. "Eric Mitchell?" A woman's tentative voice came through. "Yes. This is Karen Winters, Jessica's mother." I nearly ended the call right there. Jessica's parents had always treated me with thinly veiled disdain, viewing their daughter's marriage to a mere engineer as a disappointing step down. "Karen," I said neutrally, "what can I do for you?" "Please," her voice cracked. "You have to drop the criminal charges. Jessica says she could go to prison." "She committed multiple felonies, Karen. That tends to have consequences." "She made mistakes," Karen insisted. "But she's sorry. So sorry. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive her? For the sake of the years you shared. Did she tell you she stole over $200,000 from us? Or that she was planning to leave the country with her lover using that money? Or that she's framed at least 2 colleagues for her own embezzlement schemes?" Karen's pause spoke volumes. "She said you were exaggerating. I have documentation for everything. Bank records. Forged signatures. Photos. She's my only child," Karen whispered, her voice suddenly old and frail. "Please." I felt an unexpected wave of pity. Jessica had deceived her parents too. "I can't drop the charges, Karen. But I'll ask the prosecutor to consider a plea deal if she returns everything she took. That's the best I can offer." 3 days later, I received a call from Meridian Marketing's legal department requesting a meeting. Initially fearing another complication, I was surprised to find myself welcomed by a team eager to share information. We've been conducting an internal investigation since Miss Sinclair brought her concerns to us, explained Graham Foster, head of legal. What we found is disturbing. They laid out a detailed timeline of Jessica's financial manipulations within the company, client funds redirected, expense reports inflated, records altered. Most disturbing were the calculated efforts to implicate others when questions arose. We've had 5 employees terminated in the past 2 years for financial improprieties, Foster continued. Upon review, we believe most, if not all, were framed by your wife. Why are you sharing this with me? I asked. Because several former employees have agreed to testify about Ms. Mitchell's actions in your case. We want to coordinate our evidence with your legal team. That evening, I met with Laura to share the news. Her vindication was bittersweet. 5 people, she said quietly. 5 careers potentially ruined. They're reviewing all the terminations, I assured her. Making things right. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Chad. Need to talk. It's important. Laura saw the message and raised an eyebrow. Are you going to meet him? I think I have to, I replied, already texting back a location. A public coffee shop where I'd feel safe. The following afternoon, I watched Chad enter the cafe, his confident swagger replaced by nervous glances and slumped shoulders. He slid into the seat across from me, hands wrapping around his coffee cup like it was a lifeline. Thanks for meeting me, he mumbled, unable to meet my eyes. What do you want, Chad? He took a deep breath. Jessica's been blackmailing me. Of all the things I'd expected him to say, this wasn't on the list. What? Those photos you found? She threatened to send them to my family, my boss, everyone if I didn't help her move money through my accounts. His voice shook. I'm not proud of the affair, but the financial stuff, she forced me into that part. You expect me to believe you're a victim here? No, Chad said, finally meeting my gaze. But I'm willing to testify against her. I have texts, emails, records of everything she made me do. My lawyer says it could help both our cases. I studied the man who'd slept with my wife, trying to see past my hatred to evaluate his usefulness. Why come forward now? Because I found out I wasn't the only one she was manipulating, Chad said grimly. And because she's threatening to destroy me anyway. I have nothing left to lose. As I left the cafe, I realized the full scope of Jessica's deception was still unfolding, each day bringing new revelations of how far her web of manipulation had stretched, and how many lives she'd damaged along the way. The legal proceedings dragged on for months, each day bringing new revelations about Jessica's deceptions. The emotional toll was immense. I lost weight, struggled to sleep, and found it difficult to focus at work. My boss had been understanding initially, but his patience was wearing thin as deadlines slipped and my performance suffered. You need to take care of yourself, Dan insisted during one of our weekly dinners. This case is consuming you. He was right. I'd become obsessed with gathering evidence, building the strongest possible case against Jessica. Every waking moment was dedicated to untangling her web of lies, leaving little time for healing. Following Dan's advice, I found a small apartment across town, a fresh start away from the house filled with memories of Jessica. The place was nothing special, beige walls, generic furniture, and minimal character. But it was mine, untainted by betrayal. I was unpacking the last of my boxes when Valerie called with unexpected news. Jessica wants to settle, she said without preamble. She's offering full financial restitution in exchange for dropping the criminal charges. I sat heavily on my new couch. Why the sudden change? Her attorney wouldn't say, but my guess? The company investigation is damning. Several former employees are suing for wrongful termination. The evidence trail leads directly to her. What exactly is she offering? Return of all funds, both personal and corporate. She'll accept full responsibility for the financial fraud. In exchange, you support her plea for probation instead of jail time, and you drop your claim for punitive damages. And the divorce terms? Clean break. No alimony. No further claims against you or your assets. It felt too easy after months of Jessica fighting every step of the way. What's the catch? No catch that I can see, Valerie said. Sometimes people realize they can't win and cut their losses. Do you want to accept? Part of me wanted Jessica to face the full consequences of her actions, to experience the public humiliation of a trial and potential prison time. But another part, a part one was trying to nurture, just wanted peace. Closure. Let's do it, I said finally. I need to move on. 2 weeks later, I sat in a conference room watching Jessica sign the settlement documents. She'd lost weight and dark circles shadowed her eyes. For a brief moment, our gazes met, and I saw something unfamiliar in her expression. Genuine remorse, perhaps. Or simply defeat. She left without speaking to me. Our marriage ended with signatures on legal papers, the final chapter of a story that had begun with hopeful vows and ended in calculated betrayal. With the case settled, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my marriage. I joined a weekend hiking group. I started therapy, finally acknowledging the depth of my emotional wounds. Trust will be difficult for you, my therapist observed during one session. Jessica's betrayal wasn't a single event but years of deception. That changes how you view relationships. Will I ever be able to trust anyone again? I asked. Yes, she said with quiet confidence. But it will take time and conscious effort. 3 months after the settlement, I was cleaning out the storage unit where I'd stashed boxes from our shared house. Most contained items I planned to donate: kitchen gadgets, old electronics, books Jessica had collected but never read. In the back corner sat a bin labeled Jessica, personal papers. I almost left it unopened. Our legal agreement required me to return her personal effects, and I'd planned to simply drop the bin at her attorney's office. But something made me pause and lift the lid. Inside were expected items: old tax returns, school transcripts, family photos. But beneath these mundane documents, I found a leather-bound journal I didn't recognize. The dates inside spanned the first 2 years of our marriage. I knew I shouldn't read it. This was precisely the kind of invasion of privacy Jessica had accused me of. But after everything she'd done, my moral compass regarding her privacy had been permanently altered. I opened to a random page. April 15th, Eric received his bonus today. He's talking about investing it for our future. Poor, naive Eric. He has no idea that I'm building my future. Another 6 months of playing the devoted wife, then I can execute the next phase. My hands trembled as I flipped through more pages, each entry revealing Jessica's calculated approach to our marriage from the very beginning. References to the long game and securing financial stability appeared repeatedly. One passage described how she deliberately acted more affectionate whenever I questioned her late nights. In a folder beneath the journal, I found medical records I'd never seen before. A gynecological report from the year before we married contained a devastating revelation. Jessica had been diagnosed with a condition that made pregnancy extremely unlikely. She'd known all along she couldn't have children. The countless conversations we'd had about starting a family someday, her insistence that we weren't ready yet, that we should focus on our careers first, all took on a sinister new light. She'd never intended to have children with me. It had been yet another lie in her elaborate performance. I closed the folder and sat back, a strange calm replacing the initial shock. These discoveries should have devastated me, but instead they provided a strange comfort. The woman I'd married had never existed. I hadn't failed to love her enough or keep her faithful. She'd been playing a role from the beginning. The real Jessica had finally revealed herself through her own words, and in doing so, had inadvertently given me the closure I needed to truly move forward. A year and a half after my divorce was finalized, I barely recognized my life, or myself. The man who had been shattered by betrayal had slowly rebuilt himself into someone stronger, more cautious perhaps, but also more authentic. My promotion at work had come 6 months ago, recognition for a major project I'd thrown myself into as therapy of sorts. The additional responsibilities kept me busy, especially after I volunteered to mentor Tyler, a promising new engineer fresh out of college. "You've got a natural talent for teaching," my boss remarked after watching me guide Tyler through a complicated system design. "Ever considered taking on more of a leadership role?" The idea surprised me. Before Jessica, I'd been content to focus on technical challenges rather than people management. But something had shifted in me, a desire to connect, to help others grow, to build something meaningful beyond code and circuits. "I think I'd like that," I replied, and meant it. My weekly therapy sessions had decreased to monthly check-ins, but I still valued the perspective they provided. "Healing isn't linear," Dr. Bennett reminded me during our last session. "There will still be difficult days, moments when trust feels impossible. The difference now is that you have tools to work through those moments." She was right. I still had nightmares occasionally, Jessica laughing as she emptied our bank accounts, or Chad smirking as he embraced her. But those dreams no longer derailed my days. They were echoes of pain, not fresh wounds. The running club had been Dan's idea, another attempt to pull me out of isolation. I'd resisted initially, convinced I was too out of shape, too broken for such normal social activities. But he persisted and eventually I gave in. Just 3 miles, he'd promised. Twice a week. If you hate it after a month, you can quit. I didn't quit. Instead, I found unexpected solace in the rhythm of feet hitting pavement, in the simple camaraderie of shared suffering as we tackled hills and pushed through fatigue. Running became my moving meditation, clearing my mind when thoughts grew too tangled. You're signing up for the half marathon, right? Marcus, one of the club regulars, asked as we cooled down after a particularly challenging Saturday run. Registration deadline is next week. I don't know, I hedged. 13 miles seems ambitious. You're ready, he insisted. Your pace has improved every month. Besides, we train as a group. No one gets left behind. That evening, I registered for the race. My first concrete goal that had nothing to do with work or recovery. Just something normal people did, challenging themselves for the simple satisfaction of achievement. Training intensified over the next 2 months. Our weekend-long runs grew increasingly demanding, but I found myself looking forward to them, to the quiet mornings, the endorphin rush, the sense of accomplishment. It was during one such training run, 8 miles along the riverfront path, that I first noticed her. She kept pace about 20 yards ahead of me, athletic build, dark ponytail swinging rhythmically with each stride. Unlike many runners with earbuds, she seemed present in her surroundings, nodding at passers-by, pausing briefly to watch a heron take flight from the water. When we reached the turnaround point, she stopped for water at the same fountain I approached. Preparing for the half? She asked, noting my running club shirt. Trying to, I replied, slightly winded. First one. Mine too, she smiled, extending her hand. I'm Claire. Eric. We fell into step together on the return route, conversation flowing surprisingly easily between breaths. Claire was new to the city, having moved for a job 6 months ago. She worked as a financial investigator, specializing in fraud cases. Ironic, I remarked before thinking better of it. How so? She asked. I hesitated, then offered the abbreviated version of my history with Jessica. Claire listened without interruption, her expression thoughtful rather than pitying. That's actually similar to cases I work on, she said finally. People are capable of extraordinary deception, especially when money's involved. Does your job make you suspicious of everyone? I asked. She laughed, a genuine warm sound. Initially, yes. But ultimately, it taught me to trust my instincts rather than appearances. Some people set off internal alarms from the first meeting. Did I? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Claire studied me briefly. No. No alarms. Her smile returned. Just the opposite, actually. We parted at the parking lot with casual promises to run together at the next club meeting. As I drove home, I realized I'd shared more about Jessica in those 4 miles than I had with anyone outside my immediate circle. More surprising was how unburdened I felt afterward. 2 weeks later, the running club organized a group hike, cross-training for our race preparation. Claire and I naturally fell into step on the trail, gradually lagging behind the main group as our conversation deepened. She told me about her own relationship history, a fiancé who'd turned out to be married, living a double life between 2 cities. It was devastating at the time, she admitted. But it led me to my career, to helping others avoid similar situations. Do you think we're drawn to danger without realizing it? I asked. No, she said firmly. I think manipulative people are exceptionally good at appearing safe. They study what we want and become exactly that. As we reached the summit viewpoint, the group already resting and taking photos, Claire turned to me. The weekly runs, this hike, they're the highlights of my week, she said, her directness catching me off guard. I'd like to see you outside the group sometime. If that's something you might be interested in. For a moment, old fears surfaced. The risk of trust, the possibility of deception. But as I looked at Claire's open, expectant expression, I found myself nodding. I'd like that very much, I said, and felt the final weight of my past begin to lift as I stepped toward a new beginning.